In contemporary literature, problem and project-based learning and assessment are often portrayed as new ideas in education, but this is not the case. Problem and project-based learning are often considered to be progressive ideas in education. However, that doesn't mean that they're necessarily new. John Dewey, in his 1916 publication Democracy and Education, An Introduction to the Philosophy of Education, promoted ideas which are consistent with problem and project-based learning. These were further developed by Kolb in 1984. At their foundation, problem and project-based learning are grounded in a constructivist, learner-centered approach where there is active participation from the learner who develops context-dependent, socially mediated understandings that are situated in a real-world environment. Problem and project-based learning and assessment share a number of important similarities. Both are founded on a set of constructivist assumptions about the nature of learning and assessment. Both involve the holistic learning and assessment of knowledge which is embedded in practice. They are both outcomes-based, where learning is contextualized in authentic problems or projects. The learning is learner-centered and group-based, where the teacher moves from a position of a content expert to a teacher facilitator. Where the important differences exist are in the intention and outcome of the activities. In the case of problem-based learning, learning results from the process of working towards an understanding or resolution of a problem. In this case, the problem is often fuzzy and unbounded, and where there is not one correct solution to the issue. In the case of project-based learning, the end result of the activity is the development of a project which addresses a problem or an issue. Advocates of problem and project-based learning claim that there are a number of important benefits to these approaches, that learners become more committed, confident, enlightened, that they become more independent learners who are able to find and use appropriate learning resources. Effectively, these approaches support learning to learn skills. They support long-term retention of knowledge rather than the learning of facts that are short-term. And they develop learning where there is an integration of basic concepts into problems with the development of critical and analytic skills. For teachers engaging in problem and project-based learning, there are a number of important roles to adopt and a number of processes to follow. It's important that teachers adopt a modelling approach, demonstrating appropriate behaviours and practices in the engagement of the activities. It's important that teachers scaffold or support learners' activities without interfering too much in the process, and that teachers fade, that they withdraw from the support of the activity as learners become more capable and confident in their problem and project-based learning activity. Effectively, the role of the teacher becomes that of a coach, supporting learners as they engage in problem solving and the development of projects. So teachers engaging in problem and project-based learning move from the position of content expert to that of guide, coach or mentor. They are important in providing feedback and reflection on the learning process and group dynamics. They're responsible for probing findings, hypotheses and conclusions and sharing their thinking with students who need direction and guidance. The success of problem and project-based learning and assessment is dependent on a range of factors, including the appropriate selection of the program, the delineation of clear expectations and roles, the quality of the tutor or teacher, and in particular in the vocational sector, the teacher's ability to provide adequate work-based experience which brings the nuances of the workplace to learning. The willingness of students to be engaged in problem and project-based learning, where they are required to demonstrate significant independence and a willingness to develop their own ideas. It is also important that students come to project and problem-based learning with a set of underpinning knowledge and skills, both about the issue in which they are involved and in the business of completing problem and project-based learning activities. Finally, and particularly in the vocational sector, industry engagement and support are seen as really critical in the success of these activities, where industry participates with learners in creating an authentic environment. If one searches YouTube with the key terms of problem and project-based learning, it's possible to find a number of short videos that show examples of these activities at play. Also reviews from students as well as teachers. YouTube also provides examples of high-tech simulations in the form of problem and project-based learning. These include flight simulations and medical dummies. Videos also provide a glimpse to the future with examples of virtual environments where problems can be solved and projects can be completed. The references shown here provide further information on problem and project-based learning, as well as specific examples of their implementation in the education sector.